All right, let's get started. Thanks so much for joining us. Hello from Miami, where we had a crazy windstorm the past 2 days, and all the schools are closed in Miami today. So I have my 3-year-old here in case you hear any screaming. That's no one being tortured. That's just Archie who wants attention. Really excited to share with you some of the new features that we have in Koyfin, as well as go over some of the kind of most popular features that advisors are using and asking about. And let me just share my screen to kind of give you a sense of what we're going to be talking about today. So we have our webinar today on the logistics side. The webinar is being recorded, so don't feel like you have to take notes feverishly, and we'll send you a recording after it's done. So everyone who registers will receive a recording. We'll go over the functionality overview and do a Q&A. I do have Connor on the line as well. Connor handles a lot of things here, including community, including doing some work on the product side, and all the great Twitter posts that you see is all Connor's work. If you don't follow our Twitter, this is a good reminder to do that as well. So a lot of good content on macro and stocks and other random stuff, including what great investors in the past have said in their philosophies. And then in terms of kind of like the actual, oh, by the way, if you do have a question that you want to ask during the presentation, Connor is going to answer it. And also if it's something kind of like a show and tell, then we could leave it to the end and I'll answer it. But feel free to put any questions in the chat below as we're doing this. And then in terms of kind of our overview and what we want to do for this demo and for this webinar, the first thing I want to let you know is we do have an iPhone app. Some users don't know about it. It's really good. It's really robust. It's something that really differentiates us from some of our competitors in terms of having a great iPhone and Android app. So if you type in Koyfin app or go to our website, there's a QR code there. If you go to the App Store, you could search for Koyfin, and please download the app. So all your watch lists will be on there. You could also see how the market is doing live. So that's a great thing to do, and make sure you're aware of that. We're going to spend a bunch of time on model portfolios and the recent updates to model portfolios. So I'll kind of show you that. And then lastly, I'll show you some stuff on graphing, ETF valuation, and performance to round that out. Before we get started, I did want to take a poll for kind of most popular model portfolio improvements. And I think I have to pause my screen for a sec, or the share. But we do have a poll here that I'm going to launch. And basically what I want to hear from you is, what is the one feature in model portfolios that you want us to create, or what functionality do you want us to create in model portfolios? I'm going to launch that right now in the poll. So you should have kind of that poll button. If you could sort of click on that feature and tell me what you want us to create. The choices are, number one would be exposure exhibits. So kind of like having country asset allocation exhibits. So that's number one. Choice number two is custodian integration. So do you want to kind of integrate and pull portfolios from Schwab, Ultra, stuff like that? Choice number three is other integration. So Orion, Black Diamond, all the other kind of portfolio tools that you use. Choice number four is share and collaboration. Do you want to share model portfolios with your team and be able to kind of edit those with your team? Choice number five is having sleeves, and sleeves are kind of using portfolios and other portfolios. Choice number six is having model. I'm like, what does MP stand for? Model portfolio comparison tools. So being able to graph and compare two portfolios. And I think related to that is really client proposal tools, but really allowing a system where we're creating a proposal for a client to say like, hey, Mr. Henry, you're here. You're this risk tolerance. This is my proposal. You're paying way too much on fees. Here's why my portfolio is better. It's lower risk. It's higher return. It's lower fees. I'm a genius. You should be my client. Sort of that workflow. So those are the choices, and the answers are coming in. I'm going to cut off this poll in a little bit, but really interesting what's going on here. So, okay, we see here. So just in terms of looking at the results, looks like number one by a smidge, by a nose, unless somebody else wants to vote, is exposure exhibits, so country, asset, sector, stuff like that. This is great news because exposure exhibits are coming pretty soon. They're slated to be released either December or January. Just so you're aware, we are switching our data provider from Lipper to Morningstar, and that has been one of the reasons why we've been delaying creating those exhibits, exposure exhibits, because the data from Lipper and Morningstar, the categories, the way it comes in is a little bit differently. So the good news is we're going to have that soon, and you may kind of notice that that's a pretty big glaring thing that's missing, and an obvious thing that we should create, and we're going to be creating those soon. Love to see that market, model portfolio, and client proposal tools are next on the list. So we'll be working on that as well over the next couple of months. And looks like integrations is the third thing that people are voting for, either some of the portfolio management systems or custodians. And looks like some people want sleeves and sharing, which we'll be working on as well. And maybe sharing or sleeves isn't the number one feature that you want, but maybe it's the second or third feature that you want. So that's going to be there as well. So I'm going to be closing the poll in 5 seconds. If you haven't voted, please vote. And the good thing is that this kind of aligns pretty nicely with what we're doing at Koyfin going forward. All right. Oh, I don't know. Sorry about that. I hit share results. I don't know what that does. I haven't used polls before. So I hope you can see it. Maybe I could share my screen, and that way you could see it as well. All right. I'm not sure how to do this, so we'll have to we'll have to. I hope you can see the results. All right. Moving to some of the demo work. In terms of going the recent improvements, let me kind of like show you what's going on with Koyfin and some of the stuff we did. Sorry, I was in here before playing around with it. So I'm just going to start here with model portfolios and some of the improvements that we've made. So the two big improvements that we made are, number one, you can now upload a CSV of previous allocations. So if you go to this kind of create button, I'll show you how I did that. If you're in model portfolios here and you go to create new portfolio, you'll see a tab here which says upload CSV. And basically this is where you're going to copy and paste the CSV. The format of the CSV right now is pretty strict of how you should import the CSV. So this is an example of a CSV. And by the way, if you're kind of here, this example, you can download and see what it looks like. But basically what we need in the CSV is a title row, a column with your tickers, a column with weights, and a column with dates. So if you only have if you don't have any rebalance period, so let's say you just have one portfolio that's as of today, you still need to put a start date in here. So you still need to decide when you're going to have the start date, either 10 years ago or whenever you want to decide to have the start date. That's a little bit awkward right now. We get a lot of feedback of folks not understanding what it means to have a start date. And we're going to be changing that. We're basically going to eliminate the need to put a start date going forward. And we're going to automatically calculate a start date for you. But if you could just bear with us, right now, you do need a start date for the portfolio. So if you only have one start date, let's say this is my portfolio, I have 5 instruments, these are my weights, this is my start date, I would do it this way. If you do have a rebalance period, so let's say on June 30th, I rebalanced my portfolio, then you would have 2 dates here. And so this would be one period and this would be another period. And so this CSV would have all your different periods and all your different weights, and you could just upload that. You'd go through that process, and that would populate a model portfolio that then you could work off of, and you don't have to type in each one of those weights individually here like you do now. So that's going to be pretty easy. The other thing that we did is you can now create a custom benchmark. So if I let's say have a custom benchmark. So let's say I have a custom benchmark I'm just going to create here called my 60-40 portfolio. Let's say my initial value is whatever the custom benchmark doesn't matter. So you could leave this as SPY. This you want to just kind of start in, really early on. You want to have, maybe a daily rebound. So let's actually do monthly. It'll be a little bit quicker, or maybe even a quarterly. No fees in the custom benchmark. And so let's say I did, VU is my equities, and then BND is my bonds. And so let's say I did 60/40, and so that's my allocation. I would create the portfolio. That's now a portfolio that's going to be here under 60/40. Here it is, 60/40 portfolio. And then let's say I now wanted to look at my my growth portfolio, my growth US portfolio, and I went to edit portfolio. Here in the benchmark, I could now select one of my portfolios. So I could see here my 60/40 portfolios here. I could put that as a benchmark, and I can save the changes, and that would go back and basically calculate my growth portfolio. And then on the performance chart, it would show me my 60/40 portfolio versus my growth portfolio. So my benchmark versus my growth portfolio, and then also show me my risk metrics based on or relative to my custom benchmark. So here's my portfolio, here's my benchmark, which is the 60/40 portfolio. And this kind of beta and alpha and Sortino ratio is now calculated based on this. So this is something that a lot of folks asked us about in terms of creating custom portfolios. So that's now here where you can do that. The kind of other things that we're going to be working on in model portfolios, just to give you a sense, kind of like in terms of the order of operations, we are going to be working on a bunch of UI improvements for model portfolios. So that little issue, or that issue I told you about, that right now folks are getting confused that they have to have a start date. A lot of people say, I don't know what my start date is. I just want to put in my current portfolio. So that's a confusion point that we've noticed, and we're fixing the way that works. The start date, you'll be able to kind of select an automatic start date, or kind of like when all the securities have been trading together. So that's going to be just a lot easier to do. And then we're going to have some templates as well for you to choose from when you're creating the portfolio, and just some improvements here in terms of, as we were speaking to users, just seeing some confusion points. So we'll be improving that as well. So all these are coming down the pipe, and we should have those out pretty soon. The exposure exhibits are going to be out probably in, I'm guessing, January, because December is going to be a lot of stuff we have going on. We also have, to the extent there's any nice Canadian folks, we love Canadian advisors. We're going to have Canadian mutual fund data in December, so that's going to be something that we're going to have as well. We are going to be starting a custodian integration, so we're going to start with Schwab, and then we'll be moving to other custodians as well. So if you are on Altruist or something else, let us know if there's one that you want prioritized. You could always just email us, and then what I'm going to have you do is actually email the partner, like Altruist, and that way their team knows that there's a bunch of users that want to integrate with Koyfin, because that's how they prioritize their integration. So if I reach out to Altruist, they'll say, oh, well, you're like one of 10 companies that want to integrate with us. If you, as a client of Altruist, email them and say, hey, I want Koyfin, or 10 of you email Altruist or Fidelity or whoever it is, then that becomes more important to them, and that's how they prioritize their stuff. Sharing and team collaboration is coming down the pipe with you being able to basically, the way that you share today in Koyfin, I'll just show you how that works, and it's going to be very similar, is if I have a watch list, I could share that with a team, right? So I could click the share button, and I could put Connor.McNeil@Koyfin.com. I could make Connor an editor or a viewer. So I could choose, let's say he's an editor, because I think Connor's going to add a lot of value here, and change the portfolio. I click share. Okay, I think I spelled Connor's last name incorrectly. This should work, but if you spell the name correctly, this is going to work. And what happens is the Oh, you're Connor, you're on like your personal email. That's why on Koyfin. But once the thing is shared, you get this little kind of icon and like, hey, there's other people sharing this portfolio. And so if Connor makes any changes, that'll be reflected in the watch list. So you could share this with like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 people, whatever it is. And then you'll be able to kind of collaborate and work as a team on these watch lists. So that's out today already. So if you wanted to do that for watch lists or for if you have, let's say, you can create some portfolios in here as well with quantities and market value. You could share those today, but we're bringing that collaboration functionality to model portfolios so that you'll be able to kind of, when I'm in my tech portfolio, I'd be able to click share and then share that with my team and share that with a lot of people on Koyfin so that they can see it or they can duplicate it or they can work on it together. So that's coming down the pipe. Sleeves in terms of using model portfolios and other model portfolios, that's probably coming a little later in sort of 1Q. Portfolio comparison tools and client proposal tools, that's important. So we think that that's important based on your responses in the poll. You have told us that's important, so we're looking to really accelerate that, and I'm hoping that, or we'll be delivering some of that stuff in the first quarter as well. So going back to some of the things that I wanted to mention to you, these are I covered the model portfolios. I also wanted to tell you about a really awesome feature that we released, which is ETF valuation. So this is something that's pretty unique to Koyfin now, where in the graph here, you are able to, I'm just going to get rid of SPY. You're able to now look at valuation metrics. So if I wanted to look at the valuation of SPY over the past 20 years, I now have a sense of how SPY traded. You can also put in these statistical bands. So that's always helpful to put in 1 and 2 standard deviations. So you could actually see how things are trading relative to the historical range. And if I hit 10-year or I hit 20-year, those bands are automatically updated based on my selection here. So this is awesome because you can now, we have a lot of under market data, or sorry, under valuation. So if you go here, let me just show you how I did that. So in my graph, if you go here under financials valuation, you'll be able to see all the different metrics that you can see for the ETFs. So if PE is probably used by 90% of folks when they think about the valuation. But if you want to look at free cash flow yield, you can do that as well. And so right now the free cash flow yield is 3.4% for the SPY, and that's been sort of coming down. Some of the measures, just so you're aware, we have a longer history on. Some measures like free cash flow yield, we have a shorter time frame on. I think if I do EV to sales or price to sales, let's see here. I think we have a price to sales. Where did it go here? I think we have a longer term history for this. No, 2016. And if I do EV to sales, just all right. So some measures we have a much longer history on. So like EV to sales, we'll have it from 2002 or 2004. Other measures we only have it from 2016. So you'll have to kind of play around with it and see the measure. The other thing that I'd mention is we did this for the top 50 ETFs. So if you change this to XLY, you'll be. This is a template that didn't save. Sorry about that. I'm just going to put in PE. So if you did that for XLY, you'll be able to kind of see that. If you did it for any of the sector ETFs or any of the kind of like most liquid ETFs, we'll have that information. If you're doing it for a smaller ETF, so like YOLO is a pretty small ETF, we'll have that information. Well, I don't think YOLO has any earnings, so maybe that's not a good one. Let me try what's an ETF that has, let me see here. No, that doesn't. Let me just see here. Under ETF, if I search for growth. So here under, just see if I could find an ETF. So this Invesco ETF. I'm not sure what it is, GRPM. It's probably not one of the largest 50. So you can see here, if I pull that one up, the data set only goes back a couple of weeks. So if you're looking at a smaller ETF, just be aware that we just started calculating the history, whereas the other ETFs, we spent some time looking at the history and being able to look at the history and the constituents historically. The way we calculate these valuation measures is we take the constituents every single day going back historically. And that's something that took a lot of processing power and a lot of data aggregation. And so we focused on the largest ETFs today in the history, and then some of the small ETFs we'll be doing, I think history till 2016, but today the history only starts till a couple of weeks ago. So just so you're aware of that. The other thing I wanted to mention on graphs, let me just change this to SPY. We do have some really interesting performance graphs that a lot of folks don't know about. So just wanted to make sure that you do know about this. So if you want to look at, let's say, like total return on a rolling basis, we do have the 3, 5, and 10 year ways to look at total return. So if you wanted to, for example, I'm just going to get rid of PE. If you wanted to compare the total return on an annualized basis over the past 20 years, and so every point in time here will be the 5-year return. And this is a nice way to kind of see, what's the run rate 5-year or what's the run rate 10-year total return for kind of like an index. So obviously, here this captures a lot of in 2009. So that's going to be kind of negative, and then you have positive. And so this will give you a longer term view on how things and how assets are performing. And then you could compare these, right? So if I wanted to look at SPY and I wanted to compare that versus emerging markets, which is maybe something that folks are comparing, that's a really interesting and a really easy comparison to start making, right? And if I wanted to compare SPY versus EEM versus IWM, I could do that as well. And obviously you can put a mutual fund here as well. So if I put Fidelity Magellan, that's going to be another fund that comes here. But then really, interesting and easy way to start comparing these different instruments on a rolling basis, on a rolling performance basis. So that's a series that not a lot of folks know about. And when I mention them to demos, they're like, oh my God, I didn't know that existed. And just to kind of reiterate, you go to Plus Data Series, you go to Market Data, you go to Price and Performance, and it's called Total Return Annualized. So this should say annualized. This is just a little bit of an error. So this is total return annualized. And so this will let you choose the 3-year, 5-year, 10-year. And then the total return periodic is just more of like, hey, if I did this if I just wanted to look at the annual bar chart, this is kind of like what it would look like. I'm not sure what happened there. But if I wanted to look at the annual bar chart over the past 20 years, this is the annual return every year for the past 20 years. So that's the difference between total return periodic and annualized. And then I think most folks know that in this kind of performance graph is where you start looking at the performance from a point in time from 0 to the end. So if I want to look at 3 years or 5 years, that's where I would do that kind of performance, where if I wanted to compare a bunch of different assets, I could set up these up in the performance graph, and then it goes from 0 till the end date. So here 5 years, and this is my total return over the past 5 years, which is super cool. And then the last thing I'll mention is related to these performance charts. A lot of folks don't know about My Dashboards. So My Dashboards is where you can create a dashboard for yourself. Let me just create a new one to show you kind of like how that looks. So if I did demo, this demo dashboard is sitting here on My Dashboard. So what you can do is you can add different widgets in here. So let me add one of my watch list tables, and here my watch list table, I'm just going to add my mutual funds. So let's say these are all my mutual funds. Then what I can do here is I could add another component here called the price graph, right? And so I can create a price graph here. And now these two widgets, when I click on the dropdown, you could see that they're in letter A, group A. So if they're in group A, that means if I select one of these widgets or one of these selections here, it's going to change the second widget here as well. So I could sort of go down and see how that's performing. I could also have this multiple selection. So if I click multiple, then I'm able to select multiple things in my watch list. And so that way you could add multiple things depending on what you're trying to do. A little bit of kind of like a more advanced use case is, let me show you kind of how this works. So back in the graph, I'm going to go back to the G chart. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up the SPY, and I'm going to add that series that we looked at before called total return annualized. And let me look at the 5-year return. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to save this now as a template. So I'm going to save this as a template, and I'm going to call this 5-year annualized total return. So that's my template. So that means this setting or this tile is now saved here as my. Oh, what didn't work? Hold on a sec. All right, technical difficulties here. Let me try something else here and try to do that. So I'm under SPY. I'm going to go to price and performance. I'm going to go to annualized, 5-year annualized. I'm going to save this as a 5-year annualized total return. All right, this is fun when these bugs happen during a demo. Something's not saving on my system. I have a feeling it has to do with kind of something here that broke on my browser. But what I want to do here is, yeah, it's not working. It should save on your system. If it doesn't, then we have to figure out. But once you save this template, so you're going to give this template a name. Let's assume that this template is called, let me just show you here. Let's assume it's called, I'm going to use a mutual fund. So let me find a mutual fund. Let's say it's mutual fund drawdown and beta, which is going to have this this information. And so if I go to my market dashboard, sorry, my dashboard, and I go to my demo here, I can now, instead of having the normalized performance here, I could select one of my templates. So here I was looking at drawdown and beta. And so for every single one of my fund, I could go through this and see what the drawdown and beta and the correlation is for this fund. So it's an easy way to kind of cycle through your list of watch lists and being able to kind of see what's happening. I think these are money market funds, so the beta and correlation doesn't work. But the essence of this workflow is basically going to the graph, going to the historical graph, figuring out what is the series that you want to show, saving that as a template, as a graph template, and then loading that graph template here under one of your My Dashboards. So that's kind of how you would do that. So apologize for the technical difficulty. I'm gonna have my team investigate it, but I have a feeling that it's probably related to my computer, and it should work for you if you try it. Okay, so I'll end there. That was kind of the basis of what I wanted to cover. And if you have any questions, feel free to pop them into the chat or Q&A. You can also request to speak. I think there's a request to speak button, and then we can, you could speak live or type the question. So up to you. So Gregory has a question. Let me just read it for everyone. So if I have a 30 stock portfolio that I've run since 2020 with semi-regular turnover, how do I create a model portfolio? Entering weights with every transaction seems impractical. That's a great question, Gregory. So what you're referring to is more of an equity portfolio and not a model portfolio. And right now, we're actually creating parallel functionality called equity portfolio analytics. That's going to allow you to basically create that workflow. In the first version of portfolio analytics, we're actually focused on inputting the current portfolio and then giving you just a lot of high-level exposure metrics, risk metrics, valuation metrics. And then the second phase is going to be allowing you to look at transactions historically. So I'd say that's the kind of like tool that would give it to you, and let you do what you want to do. Today in model portfolios, the way that I would maybe try as a workaround, if it's possible, if you have the quarterly weights, or the annual weights from the portfolio, and you said you have semi-regular turnover, so maybe quarterly weights is the way to go. So you'd have to basically take the 30 stocks, figure out on a quarterly basis what the weights have been, put them in a CSV, and then upload them to Koyfin, that CSV. And that's kind of the best suggestion I have for you. But I think what you want to do is upload a bunch of transactions to Koyfin and just say, hey, here are my transactions. Let me see the performance historically over time. And that's something that we'll be working on as well. Andrew wants to know, we really like the holding section to drill down and see each position contribution to the fund's return. Any plans to add that for model portfolios? Absolutely, Andrew. So maybe I missed, I actually didn't list that in the upcoming features, but that's something that we definitely want to create. So what Andrew is referring to is if you go to SPY here and you go under snapshots holdings, there's a really interesting snapshot here that a lot of folks look at, and that's basically looking at the holdings here. So just seeing kind of like what the concentration is for all these positions. But then we give you a really cool analysis of the contribution. And for those of you who kind of look at this sort of stuff, contribution is the weight times the return equals the contribution. What's really awesome about contribution is it's additive. So that means all these numbers add up to the total return of the ETF. So I know that over the past, I have 1 year selected here. Over the past 1 year, SPY is up 15.52%. And Microsoft is contributing 307 bips to that, NVIDIA 252. And so you could kind of like see what's contributing the most. You could also see what's detracting the most. And you could also do that on a sector and industry breakdown. So I know that on a 1 year basis, SPY is up 15.53%, but tech is about 2/3 of that return, even though it's only about a third or less than a third of the weighting. So this is a really cool way to decompose returns, to look at attribution. And so we'll be creating that sort of contribution attribution analysis in Koyfin as well, both on a asset level and potentially or trying to drill down on a single stock level as well. Thank you for that question, Andrew. Anyone else? Cool. So hey Bogdan. So Bogdan is gonna basically asking in model portfolio backtesting, could one see a historical 1 year max loss? Drawdown is great, but also max loss in any given year would be great. Many clients say, I can tolerate a max loss in a year of 15 or 20%. Thanks. I'm trying to think. Sorry. So max, I see what you're. I'm just trying to think through how you would use that. So when I'm thinking about a model portfolio here, if I'm looking at kind of like my, what was I using? Growth US. If you go here under risk metrics and you think about the drawdown, you can, here, Bogdan, I'm gonna permission you to speak live if I can find you, and maybe we could have a conversation about this because that would be maybe easier. So you're now allowed to talk. I think you're on mute, but maybe you can kind of clarify in terms of how you're using this analysis if you're able to speak. Oh, can't on a train. Allowed, no problem. So I would love to see that for another model or tool. I'm just trying to think how we would present that, or kind of how would we present the benefits of 1 year max drawdown versus drawdown versus 1 year max. So if you have any examples, that would be great. And so max drawdown in the past 10 years. And so Gabriel is kind of like asking a question related to that for max drawdown in the past 10 years. So I guess the way that you would do that today is sort of see the max drawdown here in this table. But I guess we could do a better job of highlighting kind of like maybe the top drawdowns. But so right now there's a list, but maybe we could do a better job of highlighting that stuff. So thanks for suggesting that, Gabriel. Any other questions?
Oh, Rob, I just want to highlight if you go on the drawdown from peak chart there as well, in the top right hand corner, you can change the frequency from daily to monthly. It's not quite yearly, but in the future, if we had yearly in there, that'd be great as well, and would be kind of a workaround to that solution.
Good point. Good point. Cool. Any other questions? Feel free to type them in the chat. You can also request to speak if you want to speak them live and have a conversation if anyone does that anymore. Gregory is asking, is the index valuation data available in watchlist reports? Yes. So I think, Gregory, what you mean watchlist reports is these watchlists. So if you go to ETF or you have an ETF in here and you wanted to add a P ratio, so the way you do that is you go to columns, you go to financials, you go to financials. Financials, valuation. That I don't know. There's something wrong with my Zoom taking over my screen, but let me just type it into here. So if you type in PE or you type in EV to sales or whatever it is, and then select it, that metric is going to be there for you, and then you'll be able to see it in the watch list table. So yes, you can see the latest metric in the watch list table for any ETF. Anything else to wrap up? Andrew has another question. Within my dashboards, can we see charts of different assets types on one dashboard? For example, one chart shows equity funds and the other shows fixed income. So the way I would do that is in the in sort of my dashboards. Just no, let me just try to open up a different browser because I think something's going on here. In my dashboards, what you can do is kind of like this is the dashboard that I created. What I can do is I can make this window smaller, and I can make this window smaller. And so in here, maybe this is now a little bit too tight. So I could maybe do this as a price window. And then in here, I could add another watch list table and make that a little smaller. And then in here, I would, I think I have my fixed income. I have my bonds in here. So these are my different bond yields that I have. And I could do another window and look at the price here. And then make sure to connect these properly. So this is B. I want this to be in B as well. And so now every time I change this, this is going to change. If you're looking to kind of connect all these four windows together, or if you kind of like change one, I'm not sure like what the exact use case is. If you want to kind of walk us through what you're trying to do, but you can put multiple widgets here and have two widgets talk to each other. The other thing that you can do is if I wanted to make this my A widget, right? So if I wanted to make this letter A, and I wanted this to be, let's say, the normalized performance. So this is my, this is historical. This is my, let's say this is my just, price, and this is my performance. Every time I click on this, the charts are going to change together. So this is my price, this is my performance. Because these are both part of Group A, these are now going to change automatically. So this is a way to kind of link two charts. So this might be another way to achieve what you were trying to accomplish before, with kind of having two separate charts to do two separate things. Cool, awesome. I'm glad that helps. Any Any other questions? Anything that's confusing or comments or observations? Happy to hear those as well. So Bogdan wants to know, can one do stock-based compensation as a percentage of revenue for any given stock, table, watch list, chart, nice also. So you can do that with a table. Unfortunately, you can't do that with a chart today, but that's something that we definitely want to be working on in the future. So the way you would do that is with something called a custom formula. So right now I have let's go back. This is a stock question for all our stock lovers here. The way that I would do that is in my columns, I have something called custom columns and formulas. So in here is where I can create that formula. I actually have it already, but I'll share how to create it. So in custom columns and formulas, I would kind of create a new formula because you can create a new color label or date, but you can create a new formula. I'm going to call this my Bogdan SBC over revenue just because I have one there previously. I would find the two the series that I'd want to divide. So stock-based comp, and I always forget, I think it's this one, so LTM, and then I would do total revenue, LTM. So now these are the two series I want to divide. This is A, this is B. I would basically do A divided by B, and I would look at a percentage, and I would create my column. And so my column now here is under my custom columns. I would add that column here, and this column would appear here as Bogdan SBC under revenue, the famous Bogdan SBC over revenue ratio. So this is a way to have it in a watch list. There's no way to do that in a graph today, and there's no way to do that in the screener today. Something we've been asked about before, and we definitely want to deliver at some point. The custom formulas are not available in the financial section. So I think what you're referring to is under Apple, if I go to the financial highlights, so these are kind of like predefined templates. What you're able to do is you could create your own custom template. So I could either kind of duplicate one of my templates by clicking here, and I could duplicate it, or I could click new and start from scratch. And in here is I can, stock-based comp is what we looked at before, and total revenue is what we are discussing right now. I think what you want to do, Gregory, is you're trying to basically insert a formula here to say one divided by the other and have the formula. That's something that's on our roadmap, but not possible to do today. Sorry about that. Anyone else? Cool. Well, thank you so much for attending the webinar. Really appreciate you being a Koyfin user. You can always reach out to me, rob@koyfin.com. You could reach out to connor.mcneil@koyfin.com. That is his email, despite that not working. You could always reach us on the help desk by clicking on feedback and going to email us. So that would go to our help desk. Or you could post something in here where we have a discussion board of different questions, suggestions, and stuff like that. So thanks again for being a Koyfin customer, and we will talk to you next month at our next webinar. Thank you.